If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
This is another of our popular Listener's Choice interviews, which we're playing over the weekend. We've chosen the most popular interviews for you to select the Listener's Choice winner. If you're not sure how the Listener's Choice competition works, have a look at horsechats.com/choice for the rules and the leaderboard. Today's chat's been brought to you by International Horse College. International Horse College's motto is people safety and horse welfare. If that's the way you feel when you're working with horses, have a look at the website. internationalhorsecollege.com, registered training organisation 31352. Now today we've got Shawna Karrasch, who has got an interesting story, not the typical sort of, started riding when she was young, but she was actually working at SeaWorld as a trainer and using clicker training. We're going to talk to her a bit more about that in a minute. How are you today, Shawna?
I'm doing fantastic. It is nice to be here.
Lovely to talk to you, Shawna. I'm very interested about the clicker training and what you were doing with killer whales. But before we talk about that, your favourite saying or a saying, something that's a quote that's inspirational and that's helped you and inspired you.
Okay, the one I like is by somebody named Baba Diome, and he was a Senegalese forestry engineer. Mm-hmm. But he said, in the end, we will conserve only what we love. We will love only what we understand, and we will understand only what we are taught. And I think that's really nice.
Yes, it is, and I can see how that relates to where you are now, where you are with your horses. But let's start a little bit. Tell us about the history of clicker training with the animals at SeaWorld.
Okay. It's with the marine mammals.
Because this is where clicker training started, wasn't it? With the marine mammals, long before it ever came to horses. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. It is. And we didn't call it clicker training. Clicker training is actually a dog term. So with the marine mammals, we use whistles like those dog whistles, or we use a verbal bridge signal. So we didn't call it clicker training, but it really is the people that took it out of textbooks and to put it into a wide, broad use. So it now became a thing and a method and a way to really put it into practical application, I guess, and into the broad use of it. Mm-hmm. So you think about it, with the marine mammals, they got all their food each and every day, regardless of what they did or didn't do. They got all their social interactions, regardless of what they did or didn't do. So our job was to be sure that it was fun for them. It was something they liked, something they enjoyed. We used food, but we used other reinforcers as well, whatever games they liked or they wanted to do. But we made sure that we built a really good, solid reinforcement history with us and with doing stuff so that they would choose to do it all the time. And it was so normal for them to show up and to do it that if a dolphin didn't pop up when we said, hey, come on over, you checked to make sure he was okay, because it was so normal for them to want to do it that if they didn't, you thought they might not be well. Yeah. So it was a very different challenge. It was really, there was no halters, there's no lead ropes, there's no making anybody do anything. And yet we still would get in their world, So it was a challenge, but it was really fun and really reinforcing.
Yeah. Now, with that, you then have taken across to horses, but when you're at SeaWorld, you didn't actually have any interaction with horses. Is that right?
That's right. My story's a little different because I was abused as a child. So when I was really young, from the time I was 3 up until my teens, I was sexually abused. Now, this is relevant because what we would do is we would go see my granddad. He had what we call a hobby farm. He was a neurologist and psychiatrist, but on the weekends, he wanted to go see horses and have his horses. So we would go see the horses, and it dawned on me, and I was about 6 years old when I recognized this, that they're very difficult to catch. They don't actually want to be caught, I realized. But once we caught them, we could do whatever we wanted. So I realized we were kind of imposing ourselves on them, and it made me very, very uncomfortable. Now, as an adult, I look back and I realized it was a state of learned helplessness, but it was something I related to because of being 3. I didn't really have any, or even 6 at that point, I didn't have any control over what would go on in my life. So I was also being imposed upon. So at that point, at 6 years old, I decided I didn't want to be a part. I didn't want to make the horses do stuff. I didn't want to impose our will on them. And then at the ripe old age of 7, being so mature and everything, I decided I didn't want to be a part of any person or any animal's life unless I could help to improve their quality of life. And then I realized, but you know what? People are complicated and people have a choice. But the animals, they don't have a choice. We've chosen this for them. So I've stuck with that my entire life. And that is something that, to this day, is something that is really important to me, to feel like I am improving the quality of life wherever that animal is or what they're doing. So I had a very circuitous route to horses. And then I was working at SeaWorld, and I'd been there probably, 9 years at that point. And I went and saw a show jumping Grand Prix. And I'm going to, in all fairness, I'm going to tell you, I saw a number of horses who did not look happy. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of horses that I felt like they're doing it. They're kind of looked tense and, it didn't look great. But there were 2 horses that night. I remember thinking they made it look like a walk in the park. They made it look like they were having fun. They looked relaxed. The rider looked relaxed. And I thought, I want to do this. And so now I knew positive reinforcement, so I had a different take on it all. So that's where I kind of first even considered, working with horses again. So it was and then I got to work with Beezy Madden, and Beezy Madden is an Olympic, gold medalist, and it was with her that I really moved into doing horses in a professional manner, because I hadn't done anything until I spoke with the horses outside of just taking lessons to see, kind of to learn how it was done. Mm-hmm. I thought I can't change anything if I don't even know what or why they're doing what they're doing. And then when I started working with Beezy, it's when things really opened up and changed. And there was one moment in there that I thought was the beginning of me recognizing how deep and how different the training really was. Is I went to Beezy, so I worked with Beezy for that first week. All I did was 3 5-minute sessions a day with the horses in their stalls. So I never took them out of their stalls. I didn't do anything with them. And I did bridge conditioning, so I taught them about the clicker. So 3 5-minute sessions a day. And then the next 3 days was 3 5-minute sessions a day with a target. They went and had full days and did all their other stuff, but I only worked with them when they're in their stall. Yeah. And at the end of the week, Beezy said every single one of those horses is remarkably better in the arena.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of, I thought that's interesting that the training hasn't overlapped yet. But at that point it hadn't. And that was the beginning of me recognizing just how deep the training really was. So I've learned like 50 times more since I've been with horses than I did with the marine mammals.
Yeah. Wow. It's amazing just in the stall. It's not even an association with working in the arena. But, it goes to show they're pretty smart animals. And they do want to work with us. Sometimes we force them, but ultimately they do want to work with us.
Yeah.
Now, what about people wanting to learn more about clicker training, but what sort of person do they need to be? And this is just to do with animal training, particularly horse training. What sort of person, what sort of core skills or character traits? You came in because you didn't want to force anyone to do anything. So that was, I suppose, a character trait almost for you, and that's how you got into it. But someone else, what sort of person do they need to be interested in animal training and particularly horses?
Okay, I think that's a great question, Glenys. I think that one of the things, I think sometimes it's a different orientation for different people. Okay. I would say, because I've been doing this for 25 years, so I've been battling and trying to get people to recognize that this science is a good, strong way to train animals and it's not a gimmick, So, but in the very beginning, I'd say mostly the people that I got were the people that had tried anything. They've tried everything. And they're like, I'll do whatever crazy thing you have. So those are people that were kind of really just desperate for problem solving. But in the process, I would be sure to have them be a part of the training so they understood it and learned as they went. And so they typically became converts themselves, because then they're like, this is amazing, actually. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of by default we got there. But I'd say really the person who is going to be good about the really learning and delving into this is one going to be compassionate because they do want what's best for their horse and they want that relationship to be a two-way street, not just so you do it because I said so. But you also, it does take a certain amount of learning. There's a certain amount of intellect that goes into it. So I think you have to have, somebody ideally is going to be somebody who likes to learn and is open to learning new things and having an open mind with things. I think those characteristics get people hungry to learn more. And I think that part's really important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You talked about, the horses that you're working with in the stables and just work with them for a week, which you said changed the way you thought about things and confirmed, I suppose, what you thought. Has there been a particular horse that is almost like a case study that you think this is one horse that stands out above the others, or have you had ongoing equal results with all horses?
Well, I think it is very different. And there's different reasons why I've really gravitated towards different horses. Mm-hmm. I have a penchant myself for the ones that either have huge, big personalities and have often been misunderstood. Yeah. So people have tried to shut them down. They've kind of gotten themselves maybe a little dangerous because the horse is just pushing and all over. So I like those because I want all that personality. I just want to teach them some impulse control and some self-regulation so they learn when can I be my wild, fun self and teach them how to hunker down and focus. And then the other ones I really love are the really timid, shut down, they're so afraid of the world or angry at the world and trying to help them to come around. So I'd say one was a huge case study, and it was with John and Beezy, and it was a horse who didn't like jumping water. Mm-hmm. It was the open waters, and he was such a classic case study. They pulled him from shows and put the time in to really turn him around. So that was a big case study in that kind of professional capacity, and he was a stallion. And what was neat is when she took him to a place called Spruce Meadows and took him in the arena for the first time to go do this at a show, she just rode by the water, and he would normally bulge away from the water, and he was nice and soft, and Beezy clicked, and he nickered. Mm. Now, and that to me, I love that because he knew it was game on. So he was like, he was happy that he was about to play his favorite game. Mm-hmm. So that, I think, really embodies what we want from our performance horses. But I'd say that there's been so many special horses and special people that have put the time in and committed to turning the horses around and seeing a different side of them. I'm working with one now. He's my horse, and he was an off-the-track thoroughbred who was really angry. He didn't like his life. He was suspicious of everything. For the longest time, he did things for the food and not for me and the relationship, which he now does things for the relationship. He decides that whatever we're going to do, it must be okay. But it took a long time to really get him to turn around and start to see the world a little differently. But he still is, each person he gets to know and work with, because he has a broad group, it's still, you have to earn your way with him. And so I love that he is turning around and getting better, but he was a hard one that was hard to win over, But there's plenty of those out there, and I love watching him come around. So and maybe that's most relevant now because it is now in my life, but there's been so many. It's hard to pick one.
Stop. I need to interrupt this chat for a hot-off-the-press notification. That is, that the latest version of the book, 101 Careers in the Horse Industry, is now available, and the best news is that it's a free download. So if you work in the horse industry, if you have a plan to work in the horse industry and have a career in the horse industry, or if you know someone who plans to have a career in this fabulous industry, then this is an essential book for you to read now and then keep as a reference as you progress through your career. With over 100 jobs to choose from, you'll probably find at least one that you'd happily do without being paid. So simply go to internationalhorsecollege.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page and click on the 101 Careers in the Horse Industry button to receive your free career book. Imagine, maybe one day you could be a guest on Horse Chats.
I'm thinking about the people that you first had, that they were interested in problem solving and compassionate and they wanted to learn. But have you had challenges from other people that just said, oh, that's just fairy stuff, that's just, it's no good, that doesn't work with horses, go back to SeaWorld? Have you had problems like that? Because I imagine that, you've been doing it for 20 years, so it would have been a fairly new training method back then. There's a lot of research going on now about the positive contribution that the clicker training or the method of training, reward rather than punishment, is better. But I'm just wondering, I can imagine some of the conversations that you had with people, some, I suppose, conversations at you and about you. Do you want to talk to us about that?
Yes. Yes. And in the very beginning, after I watched that show Jumping Grand Prix, and I was like, this is amazing. And I was like, and then I looked into horse training, and I was like, horse people don't know about positive reinforcement? That's crazy. They'll be so excited. Well, I have access to Grand Prix show jumpers, and I kept asking, and everybody said, no, you can't do that. Horses don't learn like that. That's not how it's done. They're not smart enough to learn like this. And I kept thinking to myself, I personally have seen, target-trained hyenas, lions, tigers, meerkats, hippos, rhinos, sharks, goldfish, giraffes, llamas, but I hadn't worked with horses at that point, so I thought, well, maybe they can. I don't quite know why they wouldn't, but I really did hit such resistance. And then I think one of the things I really had to learn is, and I can still do it to this day, there's certain people you start to talk, and in the very beginning, if they didn't get it, I thought, well, it's science. I'm just not explaining the science. So I would get excited and happy, but keeping to try to do it. And then I realized you're not ready to hear this, and so now there's times when I start talking to somebody, I can tell they're not ready to hear it. So I just let it go. I just think, let's talk about the weather. Let's do something else. Let's not even address it. Just let it go. And when they're ready, they'll come around. So I think it really is trying to recognize if the person is ready to hear it or not, because there's something called cognitive dissonance, and it is a lot well. And that's like, let's say I'm talking to somebody and they start hearing about this method and it's very different from what they do, and it kind of conflicts with what they do. Yes. So they can't accept them both. So they pick the one. So they have to eschew the new method in order to stick with what they knew. So it kind of is it's almost like disregarding the science. And there's certain people that are in that place, and for a whole slew of reasons. Sometimes it's guilt, they'll feel like, oh, then I haven't been as good as I have. Or then they think, oh, or I've put so much money and time into learn this way. Now you're telling me so it can be a whole slew of reasons. And so I don't push that. I'm like, it's okay. You can do what you do. Everybody's doing the best they can. And when they're ready, they'll come around. So I've really learned not to ram it down people's throats, but just to think it's okay. We're all on this path. And in the very beginning, and I think this was really important, and as I talk to people now that are newer with positive reinforcement, there can be a real intolerance for what people have been doing. So you imagine, I go start working with Olympic, medalists in show jumping and dressage, and they're not going to abandon everything they do and just switch over to what I'm doing. They're already professionals who are at the height of their game. So what you kind of have to be ready to do is we're just going to address this little piece for now, and then this little piece, and then this little piece, and recognizing that it's going to be a migration, and everybody's on their own path and their own journey, and they'll get there when they get there if I've done my job right, if I've educated correctly, and then I let them make their own decisions. I don't say what you're doing is wrong or good or bad or better or worse or whatever. I just say there's this and there's this, and you can make up your own mind, and I find that's been a huge freedom for people. Just like with the horses, we want to give the horses choice. And we want to say, will you do this? Will you not do it? We have to do the same for the people. So sometimes the newer people get a little bit in people's grill about it. You're like, it doesn't help anybody to have an open mind. You can actually get people to dig their heels in and not mean to, but, it's with good intentions, but it can still kind of backfire.
Yes. I like the way that you, I suppose you're giving people choice the same as you're giving horses choice. It's almost like you've learned how to train, animals at SeaWorld. You've learned how to train horses, and now you're learning how to train people to be open almost to the ideas. You're not forcing them down their throats. You're just saying, well, this is what I see, and giving them the choice.
Yes, exactly. And I really do think about when I'm working with people, and sometimes, you'll hit somebody that feels, not hit them, I don't hit anything, but, I'll come across somebody that feels a little more resistant. They're here and they're wanting to learn, but they're full of buts, and I can't, and I don't, and I won't. And I try to think, you know what, if I were working with a horse who was saying, but, and I don't want to, and I don't like this, and I don't like people, or whatever it was, I wouldn't get impatient. I wouldn't. I would just think, for today, we'll take this little teeny tiny piece and we'll celebrate this little teeny tiny piece, and that's all there is to it. So I try to really slow myself down and have that same patience and understanding with the people that I do with the horses. And it's clearly much easier to do with the horses for most people. But I think it's part of our art and part of our skill is learning how to let people have that same freedom and know that we have the tools to help them learn a new way, or another tool for their toolbox, as it were.
Yes. You said you went out to the that original Grand Prix, and you saw two horses that were happy and a lot of ones that weren't. What do you think is a common thing or a common idea that people have? What could you say if you were going to say one training message, one lesson to someone, thinking that we've got a very wide varied audience, all with interest with horses, but from all over the world and with different types of interests in horses. There might be stock horses or show jumpers or eventers or carriage drivers or, people that use horses for therapy. But what's one common fault that you see that people aren't using the right communication with horses? What's, one lesson?
This is going to sound, it's a little bit tricky, but I think that training should be fun.
Yes.
It should be fun for us and fun for the horses. And I think when I watch people, I see people get too tense about it. So they get too intense and they get an agenda, and pretty soon the horse feels that agenda. And instead of just saying, it's going to take what it takes. And one of the things I say a lot is slow down, you'll go faster.
Yes.
So instead of going in and going, we have to get there and we got to do this and we're going to do it now and instead just saying, hey, if we can get this little piece and if we can relax and make sure the horse is having fun and that we're having fun, I think it makes a huge difference in where we go. You think about everybody at one point in time was a little kid who fell in love with horses. Mostly. I was a little different thing, but I turned like a 12-year-old kid in my 30s. So, I was there too. But I think that everybody loved horses and wanted to do it for the horse. And then the next thing you know, they're a professional and they have a string of horses and they have clients and they have to do this and they have show pressure to make sure that this happens. And or they get intimidated is another thing. I think horses being large, and if it feels a little out of control, they can get scared. And what happens when we're driving and someone pulls out in front of us? We get frightened.
Yep.
But a lot of times we'll say, like, why would you do that? We get it comes out as anger. And it's not really. We actually got afraid. And I think people often do that with horses a bit. They get frightened by something, and then they want to take control, and they can get a little tense. When really, if we can recognize that the horse was actually quite afraid, there are no bad horses.
Yep.
You know, horses aren't out there to be bad. They've learned how to cope and to live in their world.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they do things, even aggressive horses that want to kill humans, they taught that. They learned that from humans. You know, so I try to look and think, okay, it's not a bad horse. This is what's worked for him. It's my job to change that and turn that around to be something else. So I think if we could, this would be another thing, I guess, besides the having fun with the horses, but keeping in mind, if any behavior increases or then maintains in frequency, something's reinforcing it. That's all there is to it. Mm-hmm. So if a horse is biting, it works for him for whatever reason. So our job is then to think, well, let's make something else be more reinforcing than biting. So instead of looking at it as being bad or trying to be stubborn or trying to be, but if we can stop and think this works for him for some reason, I think sometimes it makes it easier for us to come up with a compassionate solution, you know, and to see it from the horse's standpoint a little bit.
Yeah. Now, Shawna, where are you going with this? You've got plans for the future? What, you know, if you've got a world tour going on, or you've got, you know, horses that you're working with, what have you got planned for the future?
Well, I did. I kind of hunkered down here because I am now in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Yep.
And there's a gal who built the property, or didn't build the property. She boarded here. She ended up buying the facility where she boarded her dressage horses and wants to turn it into a positive reinforcement training facility. Mm-hmm. So she invited me to come here, and so I'm a big part of turning it into a place where people can come and learn and get through stuff, you know, because we can learn a certain amount online. We can learn a certain amount through studies, but there's a certain amount that just needs to be hands-on. I can't prepare anybody for all the possible scenarios that are out there. But if they can come and kind of learn how we do things and watch and have a place to do an intense workshop, I think we can help people to have success right out of the chute. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on here. But I kind of am thinking I need to get back to doing, getting on the road a little bit more. I'm going to go to the winter circuit. It's a desert circuit here in California with some professionals and do that. And then we're going to be at the World Cup, not demonstrating or anything, but there's a World Cup equestrian winter, or the World Equestrian Games will be here in April. So we're going to go there. Yes. So I guess what we're really trying to do, I'm trying to reach more, and I also have another book in the works. So my book is 20 years by now. So I am working on a new book, and but what I really want to do is I want to reach the people. There's a big, broad range of people that do want to compete. And they're not always professionals, but they do want to compete. And you can have a horse enjoy and like competing, but you need to prepare them for that. We can't assume they like that. But with this training, we can get it where they love the shows and they love doing the elements of it. So it's really trying to reach a lot of the what we call amateur owners here, and trying to help people to take the training and put it into mainstream work. You know, so where people have this divide where, like, well, that's for backyard people, or that's for people who don't do anything but trail ride. But it's not. It's for everybody under the sun, and I want to help a lot more people that maybe haven't opened up to this idea so much yet. So really it is trying to get that next generation. I think people are ready for it more now than ever, and now that we have resources where we can offer more support beyond that. I mean, I've worked with professionals forever, but you need to really, there's only one me that could do that, you know, so now we're kind of setting up a place where we can really teach people more and take them a little further. So that I think is what's most exciting to me right now.
Wow. Okay. Look, that sounds wonderful. Certainly a good thing, a positive thing for the horse world. You know, we can increase horse welfare because there's a better understanding, better communication with people, and, well-trained horse is a safe horse.
Exactly, and that's exactly it. I think if people really embrace this training and they slow down, they look at from the horse's end of things, it is a welfare issue. It does become compassionate. We do slow down, and the horse can enjoy it. And I worked with somebody that's in New Zealand, just went over there in our summer, which is their winter, and it's a gal named Helen McFarland and her husband Duncan McFarland, and they're big show jumpers. And it was a horse who he just had low confidence. He's a young, talented stallion. He just had some confidence issues. Well, now he thinks it is the funnest game in the world. But one of the things she kept saying is, at some point, we're not going to be able to, because she comes from very much the show jumping world. She goes, we won't be able to have sticks or spurs. So then what do we do? So she's kind of saying, let's help them to really love this and enjoy it. And she's done a great job with that horse. His name's Double Whoopie. And it is fun to see, but she really embodies, I think, and where I think the industry is going to be going. I tell you, horses are next on the chopping block as far as the animal rights people, that if we don't kind of look at things and be responsible and help come up with some good solutions for things, we're kind of a target for animal activists. And that's something we need to really think about, I think, to keep our eyes open and be ahead of that game, not wait until we get police from the outside, but let's come up with some solutions and ways that we can create happy horses and happy athletes and safe horses, just like you said.
Yeah, and I think that's right. Come up from the inside. Be ahead of the game. Don't wait for animal activists to say we shouldn't be doing this and we shouldn't be doing that. Let's make it so that we know the horses are happy and we know the horses are enjoying what they do with us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm excited about your positive reinforcement training and would love to get you back on again, Shawna, so hopefully we'll catch up with you soon. But if people want to contact you, now I know that you've got ontargettraining.com, which is on-target-training.com. Is that the best place to contact you? That's the best way?
Yes.
Perfect.
That is the best way.
Okay.
And you can look at Terra Nova Training Center is the training center where we're putting together and a place where people can come visit, and we have a newsletter there. And then I also have a podcast called Equine Clicker 101, which walks you through stages of addressing different issues with the positive reinforcement. So it really is like a classroom kind of thing. Yep. And so that's another thing. And then I also have my Ask Shawna questions, which are a place where you can submit questions. And you can find all of those on my website. So the website is a great place to go, and the on-target-training.com, which is very good for you to get those dashes in there.
Okay. All right. So if you've got questions about clicker training, about positive reinforcement, Shawna's got a very good Q&A section on her website already, so you don't even need to contact her a lot of the time. You can just go to the website, go through the Q&A, and that'll probably answer the question that you've got. Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah. And Shawna, that's great. I think I'll talk to you soon, about coming back on, but it's been wonderful. Getting a message out to the horse world, I think that's one message that we certainly need to get out there and to work towards positive reinforcement and do what we can.
I love that. It has been a real pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to talking to you again and hopefully seeing you down there sometime soon.
If you've enjoyed this chat, then please comment, rate and subscribe. If you'd like any changes or recommendations for guests, then please contact us through horsechats.com. And while you're online, have a look at the government-accredited courses at internationalhorsecollege.com. Registered Training Organisation 31352.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.